Is it too late to start a podcast? With millions of shows out there and even big names and celebrities getting into podcasting, it feels like there's no more room for a new podcast, especially one from an independent creator. But actually, the data shows that podcast listenership is still growing here in the States and around the world. New genres are opening up. The tools make it easier than ever to start a podcast. And the bottom line is, no, it's not too late for you to start a podcast. Here's why. Here in the States, over 42% of Americans listen to podcasts in 2023, the highest number ever. Not only that, but there are 2.5 million podcasts in Apple Podcasts right now, but only 450,000 are actually active, meaning they're posting new episodes on a regular basis and still publishing. So not only do millions and millions of Americans listen to podcasts, and of course millions around the world, 80% of those podcast listeners listen to 7 hours of podcasts every week. That is a lot of podcast consumption over millions of listeners just here in the States. So yes, there's room for yours if you find your audience. Not only that, but the competition may be dwindling. A recent article from Deadline actually said the creation of new podcasts have dwindled over the last 2 years. That means there's less people making podcasts, giving you more space to actually introduce your show. And there are new genres opening up that'll allow you to reach new generations of people. Kids and family podcasts are growing in popularity, with big makers like Disney creating a market now for young kids to listen to podcasts. Edison Research says that when podcast listeners start as children, on average they listen to 3 more hours of podcast content every week. So creating content for those younger audiences will mean you'll be able to grow your show now and actually give podcasting a future decades from now. But listener stats aren't the only reason to start a podcast now. It's a great time because big names are still getting into the podcast space, like YouTube. YouTube has made it so you can publish video podcasts on a channel and in a playlist, and those are available in YouTube Music. But very soon you'll be able to create an audio podcast and submit that RSS feed to YouTube Music. Other apps like Spotify are making it more discoverable so people can see clips of your shows, video clips and audio clips as they scroll in the feed. And Apple Podcasts makes it easy to monetize your show, adding subscription-based content, ad-free, early access, and more. If you'd like to learn more about using Apple Podcast monetization options, about Spotify or YouTube Music, I actually have a whole video on what your podcast looks like in every app. You can check it out above, or the link is in the description. So not only is podcast listenership still growing and big names are coming in to support the space, the tools make it easier than ever to start a show. Starting with Riverside, you can record your online podcast with remote guests, video and audio in high quality, everything's recorded locally. Then you get separate tracks for every person. Then you can even use the Riverside editor to make a split screen side-by-side video to upload to YouTube for your podcast. And then once you're done recording, you get transcripts in over 100 languages powered by AI. And you can use other tools to transform that into a blog post or social media post. And Riverside has a magic clips feature where we automatically pull 5 to 10 vertical clips from your content, the most engaging moments, to promote your podcast and find your audience. So not only are there great tools out there to record your podcast and publish, but now you can just use your phone and record a podcast just with this device. If you want to do a video podcast, you can use the Riverside app, and with remote guests, you still get high quality video and audio. And if you get an iPhone 15 with USB-C, you can plug USB-C microphones directly into the phone, no other equipment required. Put in a pair of headphones, and you're good to go making a podcast from your mobile device. We actually have a whole video on making a podcast with just an iPhone. Check it out above, or that link's in the description. And as far as investment, you can buy a $70 USB mic and sound great. We actually have a whole video on what it looks like to spend $10, $100, or $1,000 on your podcast setup. If you want to see the difference there, check it out above, or that link is in the description. So you're ready to start a podcast, and maybe you're wondering what should you talk about, or what schedule should you publish on? Well, here are 3 keys to starting your podcast, being consistent, and helping you grow your audience. Number 1, be different. And I know that sounds a little vague, but you want to find a topic or niche where you can specialize in, ideally something that you're passionate about, and you will inevitably find an audience that loves that content. As you brainstorm ideas, browse the Apple Podcast Discover page in the top charts, see what podcasts are already out there doing well, and think about how you can differentiate. Maybe you want to do a business-style show with interview and guests. Well, what's something you can do to differentiate yourself from all those other business interview podcasts? There's actually a great episode of the Creator Science podcast with Jay Klaus. He actually interviewed John Lee Dumas, and he did business-style interviews with entrepreneurs. And to differentiate himself, he did a daily podcast. I'm meaning 7 days a week. Now, that's a lot of work, but he's done it for 11 years, and now it is incredibly successful. So that means you can differentiate on how often you publish or what your schedule is, the format of the show, the length of the show. There are many ways that you can be different and stand out from the crowd amongst all those other podcasts. So number 1, be different. Number 2, be authentic. When you find a topic, if you're not passionate about it and you don't really care for it, it's going to be hard to podcast for years to come. Yes, comedy podcasts are very popular right now, as are true crime podcasts. But if you don't really care about those topics yourself, you're not going to last podcasting for months and years about that topic. So be authentic. What do you love? What are you passionate about? What do you talk about for hours with your friends and family? Find a topic and then find a niche within that topic. Let's say you love sports. I would not start just a general sports podcast because there are literally thousands of them out there, and you have like former athletes doing podcasts. Like, you're not going to be able to compete with that. But what you can do is find maybe a local sports team that you're passionate about. Maybe it's a high school basketball team. And maybe you want to do a dramatized show where you interview parents and the students, the players, the coaches, and you can tell compelling stories about sports, but a story that no one is telling. That's how you can be authentic and be different at once, talking about a topic that you love, but also finding a specific niche. And finally, number 3, the key here is be consistent. You do have to publish on a regular basis. Even if that's bi-weekly, every other week, then just make sure you publish every other week. This way your listeners and audience know when to expect those new episodes, and you have a regular publishing schedule. Consistency is key. And when you're just starting out, publishing every week is probably a good idea. So try a weekly schedule for your new episodes and maybe have about 3 to 5 already recorded and ready to publish before you launch your podcast. So if you do miss a week, you still have an episode ready to go. So is it too late to start a podcast? Absolutely not. You should start it today and use Riverside to record your remote podcast, video, and audio so you can share those clips on social media. If you have any questions about starting a podcast, drop a comment below this video. I answer all of those personally. Would love to help you there. And subscribe to the channel. We have tons of videos on the best USB mics, how to use video equipment and video switchers. And like I mentioned, if you want to learn how to take advantage of Apple Podcast subscriptions and monetize your content, check out this video right here. And again, if you're looking for USB mics because you're just starting out, this is a great video to start with. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.